Hi, I'm Giles Martin. I'm here in Abbey Road Studio 2. I was actually born in 1969 on John Lennon's birthday, which fascinated him. He said to my dad, "No, you're not sort of arsehole he's going to turn out to be." It's funny, growing up as a kid, having a father like George Martin, you can't compare it to anything else. I've never actually swapped dads with anyone. But we didn't necessarily, myself and my sister didn't necessarily grow up in a terribly musical house, apart from, as a kid, I noticed my dad played the piano a lot, and odd people would come back and forth. In fact, when I was a playgroup, they went around the class, and I was about 4 or 5, and they said, what do your parents do for a living? And they, my dad's an accountant, my dad's a lawyer, my dad's a truck driver, whatever. And I said, my dad just sits at home and plays the piano. And it turns out he was writing, I think he was writing the music for Live and Let Die, the film at the time. And there's huge embarrassment amongst my parents. They go, he's not employed, he's got a proper job. And so it wasn't a sort of thing. I think growing up I didn't necessarily grow up in a musical household. It wasn't, I had the privilege of meeting people like Paul McCartney at an early age and meeting, the Beatles at an early age, but they were just friends of my parents. It didn't mean a whole lot to me as a kid. I remember when I became interested in the guitar and became interested in songwriting, Paul did say to me, he was incredibly encouraging. He goes, "That's great, I find it difficult to write songs, and I'm Paul McCartney." So I did have a privileged sort of background as far as that goes. My parents were always very wary of me getting a proper job. I learned to play the guitar, as some people might be able to see, quite badly. But behind my parents' back, it was a thing, don't join the music industry. I'm delighted I did. In fact, I really got involved in music because my dad started to lose his hearing when I was about 16, and he needed a second pair of ears, and he didn't really want to tell people he was losing his hearing, so I became his ears to a certain extent. I'd come in and try and help him. Through that, I would learn off him, and we started working together. And it was actually a great thing because I was needed to a certain extent by him, which is nice as a son and a father working together. At the same time, he was always very good. He never had a sort of "that's my boy" kind of attitude. He was always very receptive to my ideas. And in fact, he's been receptive to people's ideas throughout the whole of his career. And he treated me no differently and was always open to my suggestions, however wrong they may be. And God knows I made lots of wrong ones. So it gave me a chance to learn, and gave me a chance to respect him for what he does and what he's done. I never I was never any good at learning songs off by heart. I mean, I bluffed my way through most things. I've never been terribly accurate at playing anything. I can play a number of things very badly, but I was much more interested in playing for a reason. So as soon as I learned to play the guitar with a friend of mine, we started playing in the underground here, started playing in tube stations. Playing whatever songs we could learn, basically, as you do. And my dad was especially distraught by this. He didn't want, George Martin's son being arrested because it's illegal. At that stage, it was illegal to busk. In fact, the way we played it should have been illegal, but it was illegal to busk. And I then got into playing bands. I formed a band, as you do, and I had a great time. I think playing in a band, learning to play an instrument, learning to play a guitar was the best thing I ever did. And not that I practice the guitar or play it very often now, but it opens so many doors as far as if you're willing to play it to people, if you're willing to bore people with it. It's great, to meet people and chat. It's like a great hobby to have. It's better than video games, for instance. And I think that being in a band taught me more about recording and music, fun enough, than being the son of George Martin did. Because if you're the son of someone, people expect you have this knowledge, which generally you don't have. People think you grew up in recording studios. Of course, I'd spent more time in studios than probably other people are 16, but it's still just a row of buttons. If you're 16, it's still just, a compressor. Of course, I know what a compressor does. I hadn't got a clue for a long time because people expect you to know these things. But if you're in a band, especially as I was in an unsuccessful band, you have a chance to make a whole lot of mistakes and learn stuff. And the hardest thing, not that it's a bad thing, but the hardest thing if you're a son of someone famous or a child of a famous person is you don't get that many chances to make mistakes before people go. People are hoping for the second coming. People are going, he's going to be just like his dad. And if you screw up, you're then the other way. He couldn't get a proper job. And so being in a sort of hidden band gave me a chance to learn. And that's what, music is about evolving. It's about discovering new stuff. It's about learning new songs. It's about learning how things work. It's not about playing the same old things every day, then things become boring. After playing in a band, I carried on playing I always played with people, always like going on tour and playing in pubs and clubs. So I thought it was just great fun. And I started writing jingles, I started writing commercials. I started doing gasoline adverts. That was for France. French gasoline was the peak of my life. And that was when I was at university. And then when I left university, I wanted to become a record producer. I wanted to write music for people and produce people, but I couldn't. I didn't have any, what do? You can't go, I'm the son of George Martin, let me produce you, or give me a job. And so I ended up working in press. And at the same time, I started looking at bands. And funny enough, my dad was he was nervous, I think, of me following in his footsteps at this stage. And I saw a band called My Life Story. They're playing My Life Story. They're playing at the Astoria in London. And I went to go see them play, and I thought they were good. And they had a whole lot of strings, and I did an arrangement of them and produced them. And they released a single that became sort of #1 in Melody Maker and Enemy and the Cool magazines. And someone showed it to my dad and said, look what your son's been up to. And I was just doing it in the evenings, as you do if you're a fan of music and you want to get into music. And that kind of opened doors for me. I left the press job and became a producer. Production engineering is something that you learn stuff all the time with, like any sort of music. I mean, I think for me, starting out and how I am now, if I can work in any form of music, I'm happy. It doesn't matter. It's just, I think I produce more stuff now and remix and mix stuff now, probably because in a way it's what people expect of me, and maybe I'm okay at it. The Love project came from the fact that they needed to do a show. It was George Harrison and Guy Liberté, who's the head of Cirque du Soleil, were friends. And they decided to do a show, and they decided they couldn't have anyone singing Beatles songs a la Mamma Mia. They didn't want, a chorus singing Hey Jude on stage. And I think that's the right decision. And so they approached my dad, and I'd just had quite a lot of success in the UK doing classical stuff at the time. And Apple came to see me, and I sat with my dad and talked to them about it. And I said to them, I could try creating a gig that never happened. And Neil Aspinall, who was the head of Apple, said, I'd love, we talked about, because he was their roadie, we talked about their shows. We talked about, starting off with Long Tall Sally and finishing with Twist and Shout, or, creating the thing. And I said, well, listen, with Pro Tools and digital stuff, I can perhaps create a gig that never happened. So, under complete secrecy, I went upstairs here into a very small room and took some material, and I took at the beginning, the drums from the end, and Get Back, because I realized they're the same tempo, and because I thought I'd start a gig, never happened, with a drum solo going into a song, and started moving things around, and people said mashing up. I always thought it was a bit rude. And then thought, how am I going to start this? And got the piano from A Day in the Life and turned that backwards, because I thought if that makes a good ending, it'll make a good beginning as it sucks into the chord from Hard Day's Night. I just had fun, And my view was, if I can impress my dad doing Beatles stuff, then that's pretty good. As a son, you're always trying to impress your dad, I think, or compete in some way. And it just so happened that it was on Beatles stuff, and I was auditioning for the Beatles. And I really thought that they probably wouldn't like it. I really thought people would think this is a really bad idea. It sounds like a bad idea if you just talk about it. And I then took Within You, Without You and Tomorrow Never Knows and stuck those together, because I thought this will definitely get me fired, if nothing else. And they came and they really liked it. They liked the ideas. And so I ended up becoming the sort of legacy which I kind of fought against for a long time. And here I am now in Abbey Road talking about it. Suddenly became part of it, and I backed up all the catalogue onto Pro Tools and started working on this project, which became Love. I came with my dog Stan and went to my room and started working. We had a list. I worked with the director of the show and my dad. My dad would come in 2 days a week, and I'd play him ideas and we'd work through stuff. So he was kind of producing me doing it. But the bosses were the Beatles, Ringo and Paul, and Olivia Harrison and Yoko Ono, who were representing George and John. And it was important that they liked everything. They had to hear everything before it was passed on anywhere else. And the interesting thing about the Beatles, it's such a protected circle, rightfully so, that if you do something and no one likes it, no one ever hears it. You know, and that's actually quite a good thing for me, because it means I could take risks. You know, occasionally people at Abbey Road were sort of, you know, people who hadn't heard anything, which the majority of people here, didn't like the idea of what we were doing, and didn't like the idea of me coming in and changing. People think it's changing history, but it's not, because I'm not deleting anything. I wasn't, you know, I was just really trying to do something different. And Ringo and Paul would come in. The funny thing is they come and listen to stuff, and they're not allowed to take stuff away either. It's not like you give them a CD. The only chance of them listening to the new mixes we were doing was by coming here and listening to them. And then later, as we got the technology sorted out and secure drives were done, I would go and see Yoko and sit down with her and work through stuff. And it's fascinating. For me, it was fascinating because I have no past with them. You know, I certainly wasn't there at the time. And so it's kind of on an even, I'm way down the pecking order, but it's kind of, I meet on an even keel, as it were. There's no history. I have no, you know, experience of anything they did. So it was quite easy for me just to go, do you like it, or what don't you like about it? And they were very proactive in it, all four of them, you know, the two wives and Ringo and Paul. You know, Paul was the one that would give me the fear, because he's such a good musician. I mean, Ringo's a pretty good musician as well, and they'd you know, they know their stuff and they know their own material. And occasionally, in fact, when we were doing the show, I sat down with Paul and I went through each bit and, you know, played in bits in the theatre, and it was great. It was a great evening. And he goes, you know, he said to me, you know, I'd have to say I really like what you've done, and what you've done has been sympathetic with my music, and I really appreciate that. For me, that was just, you know, the best. But when it came to the opening of the show, at the very beginning, when people walk into the theatre and they're sitting down, I couldn't work out because they wanted Beatles music to play, and someone said, well, why don't you just do another 60 minutes of, and I mean, it took me 2 years to do the 90 minutes. So I decided to get as many Beatles on as I could by taking the vocals off, which is difficult with Beatles stuff because there's so much leakage on the tracks, and just play the backing tracks. So it's like the Beatles are playing their backing as you walk in. So you have Dear Prudence with no vocal, you know, you have Should Have Known Better with no vocal, and Penny Lane with no vocal. And the idea was that it would counterpoint Because. When Because starts, it's just vocals. So I'm sitting with Paul, and my dad's there and Paul's there, and Penny Lane's playing in the ceiling of the theatre. And Paul goes, and what's this then? And I went, it's Penny Lane. Because I know it's bloody Penny Lane, but what's it doing in the ceiling? And I said, well, I just thought it'd be an idea to, you know, because they listened to everything. I thought it'd be an idea to maybe put the backing tracks up there. And he's like, oh, okay, you know, I'll have a listen. And it's right there, because it is their music. And, you know, and my dad sometimes, you know, he feels embarrassed because it's not his music, and it certainly isn't mine. It is theirs. There were 4 Beatles, and it was their band, and that was it. There's no 5th Beatle. With music, there's things you'd like to do. I wish I could play things better. You know, I've always thought, you know, it'd be great to really learn how to play the bass properly, or guitar properly, or piano properly. You know, but it's just a question of time. Maybe I'll start watching our video tunes and then become a better musician. But you know, I'd like to, you know, work with, you know, a really good young band. At the same time, I'd love to go and do something like the Love Project with something else, you know, with taking stuff and creating, make people listen to music again. The good thing about Love is people do analyze it, people do listen, and people don't have it on the background, they do actually get into it. And that's why we do music. We do music because we're passionate about it. And so, really, I mean, I'm about to write a television thing, you know, it's a question of writing, producing, and being creative. And anything that lets you do that, you take. And every day, I just can't believe I can do this for a living. You know, I was told by my parents for years it's an impossible job to do for a living, despite coming from my background, because I think maybe when I have kids, I'll be doing the same thing. You know, don't go into music. You know, but you do it because you love it, and if you can get paid for it, it means you don't have to do another job to get in the way as well. So it's fantastic. I would say to anyone learning an instrument, anyone, you know, struggling, because let's face it, we all struggle with instruments all the time, and we struggle with music. is that no matter how hard it is, it's hard for everyone. And that love that you have for it, never let go of it, because you know, you might be trying to learn a song and go, I'm never going to learn this. But the fact of it is, you do. You do learn, and you do move on. And the thing to do is never ever give up. Never ever lose that drive and that feeling you get when you work something out or you hear some great music. Because it's much better than sitting down and watching the telly. I mean, the thing about music is that I think if anyone's toured, I used to tour a lot. You know, you end up kind of working on automatic pilot. And you start amusing yourself with stuff. I was playing bass in a band, and you start playing the same things over and over again. And I was once in Germany, and I used to jump off the stage. And I jumped off the stage, and I had no idea until I left the how far I was jumping. We played the end of the concert, and I jumped off the stage, and there was no crowd there. I mean, let's face it, we weren't that popular, but there was a break before the people. And I launched off the stage, and seeing the band's faces, and they looked at me, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die in a shit club in Germany. And I dropped about 12 feet. My bass amp almost followed me, because I didn't have wireless or anything. The bass, it was like Wile E. Coyote. My lead unraveled. It was the only thing that kept me alive. And an Ampeg SV200 or they called came crashing down afterwards. But yeah, I spent most of my time being laughed at by people. You know, I think it's important. I think it's important in studios to have a good laugh. It's funny, I mean, you know, the Beatles, it's one thing that was shocking for me from listening to all of the tapes, everything they did, was not, you know, how serious it was how much kind of fun there is in the tapes, even when you think, oh, the White Album they didn't get on, they're really cracking up most of the time. And it's kind of, you forget that actually they came to the studio to have a good time. And all the other stuff you read about happened in offices and accountants and all that sort of stuff. Most of the studio stuff is great. And that's the thing about music. Music should be fun. You know, if you're learning music, have a laugh with it. And don't sit on your own and do it. You know, find someone to play with. Because the great thing about music is there's always someone worse than you. I mean, in my case, you really have to hunt them out. But, you know, there is. And so show off to someone. Well, the great thing about the internet is the fact you can delve into the world of songs and work out chords. And one of the problems I struggle from is you look on the internet, and quite often the chord sheets are wrong. There's some guy going, if you know the right way this song goes, please write in. You think, oh, that's no good. I can work that out. And the great thing about iVideo tunes is it breaks down that barrier, and you've suddenly been taught by professionals. You've suddenly been taught in a simple way by professionals. It's kind of inspired me. You know, I saw iVideo tunes before I got involved in it, and it's inspired me to like going, right, I'm going to see if I can learn the piano better now. You know, and I think that's a great thing. You know, people don't have access to the best people in the world, and now with iVideo tunes they do. You can be taught by some of the best people, you know, from home. And the way it's shot and the way it's done is very simple. You know, if I can understand it, it's very simple. So I think it's a great thing. It's a great learning tool for people. And I think hopefully it'll create great musicians in the future. Hi, I'm Giles Martin. I'm here in Abbey Road Studio 2 to talk about Norwegian Wood. Norwegian Wood was recorded on the 12th of October 1965 here in Studio 2. Well, that was the first attempt at it, and John came down here and actually spent about 4.5 hours really kind of rewriting the guitar part. And they did one take. And for the first time ever, George had brought a sitar into the session. And they did sort of a rough take of the song. They tried to finish it, and then John went away and wasn't that happy with it. Came back on the 21st of October, not a little bit later, they set work on it again, and they recorded it in a way where I think John and Paul, from what I can hear on the tape, were singing around the same mic and John playing the guitar. I think Paul's bass was in a cab because that's on a separate track, and there's a double 12-string, which could have been George doubling it. So you've got 2 acoustic guitars, bass, and vocals. On top of that, the sitar was added, and they had huge problems actually recording the sitar because it's Norman Smith, or Norman Hurricane Smith, who later went to go and produce Pink Floyd, was the early Beatles engineer. And he's always said he had a nightmare because he wasn't used to things like sitars, and it peaked and went up and down like mad. It was just heavily limited. And especially as George wasn't at that stage very proficient at playing it. A bit like me playing the guitar for you today. It's just, you know, he was bashing it out. But what they end up with, a song that is kind of, in its day, quite an edgy lyric in a way. You know, it's, you know, I mean, you know, people were getting banned for sexual references, and John said, I once had a girl, or should I say, she once had me, which is like his kind of, you know, sexual innuendo joke. And it sort of became part of the folk scene, and it was kind of John's opposition to Paul's songs like Michelle in a way. Michelle was kind of soft and nice and pleasant, when Norwegian Wood was heavily inspired by people like Bob Dylan. It was like a tribute to Bob Dylan. And that's how the song came about. So yeah, as we said, Norwegian Wood is based around John's guitar riff. Actually, the record is in E, but I'll play it in D because my laziness not having a capo with me. Based around the D shape, based around the chord of D. He starts off moving up, moving the A up to a B and moving down again. To an F sharp, down to an E, to a C, so what you're ending up with there is an A on the bottom of a D. Do that again, just so I can learn it as well. A little bit ham-fisted. So fast it'll be. And that's the kind of riff. Now you can play it better than that because I'm an amateur at best. The bridge section of the song, typical John Lennon, just goes straight into the minor and revolves around the minor, the D minor. In the song it's obviously E because we're capoed up. To a G, D minor, to an E minor, A7th, and you're back in with the riff again. So that's Norwegian Wood.
This is Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. This song is in the key of both E major and E minor. And since I have a capo at the second fret, we'll be referring to the chords as D major and D minor. And the intro, which is actually the verse as well, same part as the verse, is based around a D chord. And the really important thing to understand about this song is that it's in 6/8 time as opposed to the normal 4/4 time that most songs are in. And the strumming pattern we're going to use throughout most of this is going to be 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's the bass note, open fourth string on 1, 2 and 3 and, down, up. And then essentially the same thing on 4, 5, and 6 and. So you get down, down, up. So be very sure that you're familiar with that 6/8 strumming pattern before you get started. And I'm going to play the whole thing in time, the riff, and then explain it slowly. So it sounds like this. So as you can see, I'm continuing that 6/8 strumming pattern throughout the whole thing, but I'm actually adding in the vocal melody on the lower strings here as well. So the The next step after you get the 6/8 pattern down is just to simply learn the vocal melody with the right fingerings on the fretboard here. So I'm going to start with the 2nd fret on the 3rd string, hammer onto the 4th fret of the 3rd string with the 4th finger, so you get down to the open 3rd string to the 4th fret on the 4th string, so you get, and then the 2nd fret on the 4th string to the open 3rd string, 4th fret on the 4th string to the open 4th string. So that's so far as. And then moving to the 3rd fret on the 5th string with the 2nd finger to the open 3rd string, to the 2nd fret on the 5th string, to the open 5th string. So we get. And it just repeats throughout the verse. So that's guitar 1 for the verse on Norwegian Wood. Guitar 2 on the verse plays a very simple, supportive little pattern that just repeats. And my first finger is on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, referring to it as the 2nd fret from the capo. 2nd finger is on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and my 4th finger is on the 5th fret of the 1st string. So I'm just going to pick the open 4th string on beat 1, and then strum 2, 3 on strings 1, 2, and 3. So you get 1, 2, 3, and then on 4, 5, and 6, the same idea. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. So very simple. It just gets mixed in the background with the other part, and sounds nice. So that's guitar 2 for the verse on Norwegian Wood.
She asked me to stay and she told me to sit anywhere. So I looked around.
The chorus switches to D minor from the verse, which was in D major. And it's 8 measures long. Guitar 1 is just going to strum basic open chords. And those chords are going to be D minor for 2 measures, to G major for 2 measures, back to D minor for 2 measures, to E minor for 1 measure, to A7 for 1 measure. And for A7, you're just playing a basic open A chord with the 3rd string ringing open. So the strumming pattern, of course, is in 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. And you notice when we go to the chords other than D minor, like the G, the E minor, and the A, there's a different accent. There's a little more of an upstroke accent there. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, as opposed to the straighter accent on the D minor. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, down. 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. And that's the guitar 1 chorus for Norwegian Wood.
She asked me to stay and she told me to sit anywhere. So I looked around.
Guitar 2 on the chorus is going to start with a bar chord. I'm fretting across the actual 7th fret with my first finger on strings 1 through 5. Because the capo is on the 2nd fret, we'll refer to this as the 5th fret, 5 frets away from the capo. My 2nd finger is then on the 6th fret of the 2nd string, my 3rd finger would be on the 7th fret of the 4th, and my 4th finger would be on the 7th fret away from the capo on the 3rd string. So that's the D minor chord of the progression. It's actually concert E minor, but because we're thinking in the key of D minor, we'll call that D minor. So we're going to strum 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so that's 2 full measures, strumming on 1 and then 4, 5, and 6 to the G major chord. So my first finger is across the 3rd fret, all 6 strings. My 2nd finger is on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. My 3rd finger is on the 5th fret of the 5th string. 4th finger is on the 5th fret of the 4th string. So that's G, same strumming pattern. Back to D minor. back down to E minor now, to A7, just like in the first guitar part. So the whole part will sound this. And that's the Guitar 2 chorus for Norwegian Wood. This is the Guitar 1 performance of Norwegian Wood.
Had a girl, or should I say, she once had me. She showed me her room, isn't it good, Norwegian wood. She asked me to stay and she told me to sit anywhere. So I looked around and I noticed there wasn't a chair. I sat on the rug, biding my time, drinking her wine. We talked until 2, and then she said, it's time for bed. Told me she worked in the morning and started to laugh. I told her I didn't and crawled off to sleep in the bath. And when I awoke, I was alone, this bird had flown. So I lit a fire, isn't it good, Norwegian wood.
This is the Guitar 2 performance of Norwegian Wood.
Had a girl, or should I say, she once had me. She showed me her room, isn't it good, Norwegian wood. She asked me to stay and she told me to sit anywhere. So I looked around and I noticed there wasn't a chair. I sat on the rug, biding my time, drinking her wine. We talked until 2, and then she said, it's time for bed. Told me she worked in the morning and started to laugh. I told her I didn't and crawled off to sleep in the bath. And when I awoke, I was alone, this bird had flown. So I lit a fire, isn't it good, Norwegian wood.